cuando las compañías farmacéuticas persuadieron a la FDA a que se les permitiera anunciar directamente al público. Con los psiquiatras proporcionando aprobación médica, en solo 3 años, la venta de drogas psiquiátricas se disparó casi 2 veces y media. Cuando el número de víctimas de la violencia y el suicidio subió hasta las nubes, la indignación del público obligó a la FDA a publicar etiquetas con advertencias sobre los antidepresivos. Pero para entonces ya habían pasado 13 años, se habían hecho miles de millones de dólares y los psiquiatras comercializaban sus nuevas drogas milagrosas. Más del 8% de la población mundial ha tomado drogas psiquiátricas, basadas en ciencia falsa y respaldadas por gente comprada que regulan las drogas. Sus dañinos medicamentos logran utilidades brutas de casi 27.000 millones de dólares al año. Y mientras los psiquiatras encontraban una forma de diagnosticar y drogar a cada habitante del planeta, en otro frente, continuaban su asalto contra nuestras libertades más personales. Los psiquiatras exigen el derecho absoluto a determinar qué es lo mejor para el llamado enfermo mental. Después de todo, el enfermo mental está loco y no es capaz de evaluar su propio tratamiento. Para hacer cumplir su autoridad sobre los demás y mantener sus hospitales llenos a niveles redituables, los psiquiatras usan un método llamado internación involuntaria.
When you go to a real doctor, say a family doctor or a cardiologist, a patient always has the right to refuse treatment. So there is no such thing as involuntary treatment when it comes to clinical medicine as practiced by real doctors. Psychiatrists, of course, believe that people can be treated against their will.
En 1956, el psiquiatra Winfred Overholzer presentó un plan al Congreso en el que tenía la intención de llevar la internación involuntaria a un nuevo nivel. El plan era comprar 400.000 hectáreas de páramos en Alaska, construir un inmenso hospital mental y cambiar las leyes de internación para que se pudiera enviar a cualquiera con una simple indicación de un psiquiatra. El proyecto de ley pasó rápidamente por la Cámara de Representantes, pero cuando el público se enteró del plan, se enfureció, refiriéndose a él como Siberia, Estados Unidos. El Senado canceló el proyecto de ley. Pero aunque el fin del proyecto de ley Siberia detuvo sus planes a gran escala, la internación involuntaria seguía siendo el método más eficaz y lucrativo para llenar los hospitales psiquiátricos.
Again, the person has committed no crime and has no trial and is sent directly to a mental hospital, which is really a prison.
How many people go to an insane asylum and say, please lock me up? Doctors don't lock up anybody. Psychiatrists lock you up.
Incluso los niños pueden ser separados de sus padres, dejándoles poco recurso legal.
They just invaded our home. They came in with officers. Our kids were scared. You know, they come in with a piece of paper and say, you're giving us your kids. And it's like, you know, how can they just come in and do that?
She said, you could be arrested for medical neglect. And I said, but how is that when, you know, this is my child? And I see that he doesn't need that much medication. Why would you threaten me with something like that?
At 10 p.m., 2 policemen and 2 social workers came to my house and took all 4 of my kids away.
Una vez internado en un hospital psiquiátrico, al paciente se le droga y se le controla.
The more a person objects, the more this objection is construed as symptom of a mental illness.
At which point the person would be locked up in restraints. There would be the ankle, the knee, the waist, the head, the wrist, and the shoulder restraints. And if when that process was happening, if there was almost any resistance at all, the person then would be medicated to a point where they would almost be knocked out.
We had one case where they actually took a patient in a seclusion room and beat him up. And then they lied about it to the services that investigated. So it's a pretty wide range of abuse issues that we've encountered.
El personal psiquiátrico provoca a sus pacientes a la violencia para poder cobrar a las compañías de seguro hasta $1,600 diarios por cada paciente inmovilizado.
The patient would resist diagnosis, resist treatment, and also want to leave treatment while they were at the hospital. And invariably, every time, that person's situation would be exacerbated until they were put in constraints and medicated, at which point there would be documented reasons to keep that person in treatment.
La carga de tales sumas reclamadas se le cobra directamente al público en las crecientes primas de seguros de salud. En cuanto a sus víctimas, la experiencia es traumática e incluso mortal.
16-year-old Rochelle Claiborne died in Laurel Ridge's care last August. The state report shows during the restraint, quote, Rochelle stated several times she could not breathe.
In almost all respects, the staff behaved appropriately, followed the standards.
Aprovechándose de que las leyes sobre la restricción son débiles o vagas, a los psiquiatras y a su personal casi nunca se les acusa criminalmente por agresión con lesiones y asesinato.
He begged me to take him home, take him out of there, that they were treating him wrongly, and he didn't want to stay there. And I got a call that there had been an accident, that they held him down until he couldn't breathe anymore. I wish I would have listened to him, take him out of there before it had happened. And then I miss him every day. And I wish I could have him back, but I can't.
Hasta hoy, a nadie se le ha acusado por el asesinato del niño. Los ancianos son un objetivo importante del abuso psiquiátrico, con el tratamiento de ancianos en hospitales mentales que cuesta al gobierno y a las compañías de seguros más de $29 mil millones al año.
Unwarranted commitment has occurred that wouldn't have occurred if the people hadn't had insurance. The proof of that pudding is generally in how fast they get out once the insurance runs out.
Involuntary commitment is a form of psychiatric slavery, where persons are treated as if they're property and they are deprived of liberty, and people are making money in the process.
As long as we have involuntary mental hospitalization, psychiatry is a prison work. It's a crime against humanity. It is not medicine.
Cada minuto del día, alguien es encerrado involuntariamente en un hospital psiquiátrico. Y si crees que es algo que no puede ocurrirte a ti o a alguien que conoces, piénsalo mejor. Cada 75 segundos en Estados Unidos, alguien es internado en contra de su voluntad. Y con más de $1 billón dedicados a los hospitales de Estados Unidos desde 1965, los psiquiatras se han conseguido un negocio muy lucrativo, oculto tras una interpretación dudosa de la ley. Pero muy a menudo los psiquiatras cometen crímenes demasiado flagrantes para ignorarlos.
The FBI has raided the headquarters of one of the nation's largest operators of psychiatric hospitals.
Hundreds complained of overbilling, misdiagnosed conditions, and insurance fraud.
Investigators say they found more than 5,000 similar cases in all 50 states.
Psychiatrists clearly are getting rich.
Psychiatrists traded drugs for sex, filed false insurance claims, and exploited patients sexually.
We have uncovered some of the most elaborate, aggressive, creative, deceptive, immoral, and illegal schemes being used to fill empty hospital beds with insured and paying patients.
Cada psiquiatra hace un juramento de seguir un código de conducta ética, de poner el cuidado de sus pacientes por encima de todo. Pero de todas las disciplinas médicas, la psiquiatría tiene el peor récord de fraude y abuso.
Psychiatry is almost a license to print money. If a doctor were clever enough, and many of them are, there's no reason that they couldn't make at least $500,000 a year fraudulently and get away with it in psychiatry.
I don't purport to have deposed every psychiatrist in Las Vegas. I can tell you for a fact I haven't. Maybe I've deposed half, and by and large they were a dishonest, deceitful, lying bunch of people.
Tan frecuentes son sus prácticas engañosas y criminales, las cuales facturan, que los investigadores de seguros tienen una frase de jerga para ello: el hola de California y el apretón de manos de $100.
$100 handshake is when usually a patient is institutionalized. Psychiatrist, psychologist will visit that person, shake hands with them, say, hello, I'm Dr. so-and-so, I'm taking care of your problem here, and then leaves.
They might have 10 or 20 patients there. They bill an hour for each one, and they might be in the hospital for a total of 30 minutes. So 20 patients, 20 hours. and they'd send the bills off to Medicaid.
We see that most of the victims of recovered memory therapy were women who had excellent health insurance, whether it was government insurance or private insurance, because many insurance policies wouldn't pay for this kind of long-term nonsense. So those people were targeted because of the nature of the insurance that they had.
Cada año, la industria psiquiátrica de Estados Unidos defrauda al gobierno y a las aseguradoras privadas por $40,000 millones usando cualquier medio posible para engañar al público.
There were some advertisements, very seductive advertisements, for people wanting to lose weight and were having problems losing weight. And they would be given, all expenses paid to go to a particular spa. But when they got to this spa and went in and signed in, it wasn't a spa, it was a psychiatric center. And then they couldn't get out.
What instead they received massive doses of mind-altering drugs, and they were kept for a lengthy period of time, and their insurance carrier was billed tremendous amounts of money for something that was unnecessary.
Pero sus mentiras van más allá del pabellón psiquiátrico y hasta los tribunales, donde como testigos pagados dirán cualquier cosa para cobrar sus honorarios.
A psychiatric expert who will have one opinion in one scenario and a completely opposite opinion in another scenario based on which law firm or governmental agency is paying for his time.
The psychiatrist on one hand will tell the public that suicide can be prevented, but will go into court and tell a jury that suicide cannot be prevented. And then once you show his prior inconsistent statements, you also show that he is paid very well by pharmaceuticals, then the jury says, you know what, we're not so sure about you because you just lied to us.
Añadamos a su codicia, deshonestidad y avaricia sus crímenes sexuales. Constituyendo tan solo el 6% de los médicos de Estados Unidos, los psiquiatras son responsables de la tercera parte de los delitos sexuales cometidos por médicos.
It has happened so often that by the mid-80s, the insurance companies who insure physicians across America started writing sexual claims out of the policies altogether. That's how common it was.
The system was so broken that more than 25,000 complaints had been registered, but nothing acted upon. When a psychiatrist has a patient, a female patient, and abuses them sexually, there's a very high probability they'll get away with it.
I've seen many cases where the mental health professional becomes very disturbed and is using very strange and odd treatments, and that can go on for many years with no one finding out about it because it's not very public. It's quite private. Things happen behind closed doors.
Trágicamente, sus crímenes sexuales a menudo implican niños. Un buen ejemplo es el del Dr. C. Markham Berry. En apariencia, un miembro muy respetado de su comunidad. Pero todo eso se hizo añicos cuando lo arrestaron por haber violado sexualmente a los niños. Sacaron de su casa camionetas llenas de pornografía infantil y la investigación posterior descubrió que había violado sexualmente a sus pacientes, niños entre 7 y 17 años a quienes fotografió y violó sexualmente. El Estado lo describió como los 50 años de una aventura sexual desenfrenada y clandestina de Berry con niños. Este no es un incidente aislado. Es el carácter cuidadosamente enmascarado de los miembros de esta profesión. En las ciudades, los estados y los países podrán encontrarse psiquiatras que cometen violaciones, abuso sexual, asesinato y fraude. Y como vas a ver, toda la credibilidad de la psiquiatría depende del mayor fraude de todos.
I was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder,
ADHD,
mild depression,
Major depression,
manic depressive,
borderline personality disorder,
compulsive disorder, anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia, depression,
sleep disorder,
identity problem disorder.
There's no such thing as mental disorder. A mental disorder is whatever someone says it is, and if the person saying this is a mental disorder has enough power and influence, then people believe, oh, that's a mental disorder.
Pero no se puede tener poder o influencia sin credibilidad. Así que la psiquiatría fabrica la suya.
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease, and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor say aye.
It's marketed as a scientifically based document. Now, the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the DSM, do a lot of work to create an aura of scientific precision around the DSM, but it's not scientifically based.
Desde la primera edición del DSM, el número de trastornos mentales que se incluyó por votación en el Manual de Diagnóstico de la Psiquiatría ha llegado a 374. Y con cada nuevo trastorno, los psiquiatras crean otra forma de defraudar al público.
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to say a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things. You know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403.16, that's different in some important and scientifically proven way from someone who has 403.17. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Aunque parezca increíble, mientras presentan el DSM al mundo como un hecho científico, los psiquiatras admiten libremente su absoluta falta de base científica.
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.
Estos diagnósticos varían tanto como los psiquiatras que los dictaminan. En estas secuencias, tomadas con una cámara oculta, una persona visitó a varios psiquiatras quejándose de los mismos síntomas.
I'm extremely unorganized, and I didn't used to be. It's caused problems in the family. It's caused problems getting, I'm self-employed.
So you've got ADD, ADHD, you're depressed, and your depression is bipolar depressed.
Do you have a brain chemistry disorder that's probably genetic?
You have a lot of the symptoms of depression.
So it seems like it is a mixed picture. What that means is like we got some depressive symptoms and some, high symptoms.
If you're bipolar, I'll need to give you a mood stabilizer. We don't know. I kind of doubt it. It's
considered low-grade bipolar.
You are more of the ADD than ADHD.
And as far as medications for depression, because I would recommend that you start a medication, which are Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa.
Usually Propylene XR is pretty good.
I'll give you some Lexapro in the morning and some Trazodone at night.
Lamictal is a better medication for that. It works on your depression also.
But the treatment for any bipolar cycling is the same. Lithium.
Remeron is another one.
Trazodone.
Tegretol.
Lipigood. Wellbutrin.
Lexapro.
Lamictal.
Equitroid.
Depakote.
Lithium.
Ambien.
You may need an antidepressant also with your Lamictal.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
To a certain degree, it's trial and error.
You never know if it's the right drug.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
I have cured none of my patients.
We're always challenged by our lack of knowledge.
I mean, in fact, we don't know what the causes of mental illness are. Most mental illnesses, we do not know the cause.
Of course, it would be nice to know exact reasons of disorders, but maybe in the future.
I'm the Director of Research at the American Psychiatric Association. We don't know the etiology of really any of the mental disorders at the present time.
DSM-5 is coming out. It's grown to 10 times its original size, and it labels everybody. I could find 5 diagnoses that would fit you or anybody else.
Compara esto con los métodos de investigación de la patología, una ciencia real que descubre enfermedades reales usando una amplia variedad de pruebas de diagnóstico precisas.
We do millions of laboratory tests as well as the structural examination and the microscopic examination. It's a whole series of applied scientific procedures. In the case of psychiatry, there isn't any laboratory tool that can precisely identify a psychiatric disease and allow it to be classified.
It's not as if there's some study of tissue or some study of the body or some study of matter. These are all categories which are made up. They're simply made up. They don't exist in nature. They're decided upon by psychiatrists and voted on.
Los psiquiatras no son los únicos que se benefician con el DSM. Siempre que se encuentre un diagnóstico psiquiátrico, se encontrará una droga psiquiátrica.
The pharmaceutical corporations now contribute enormous sums of money for the education of psychiatric residents and for the support of research by their professors, so that psychiatry today has become in America, has become very largely learning of which drug to use with which disease or disorder.
We need to make sure that we understand the very close interactions among the American Psychiatric Association with its DSM, the pharmaceutical companies, who love the fact that every time there's a new edition of the DSM, there are dozens more categories in there, and so more conditions for the drug companies to say, oh, we've got a pill for that.
En el 2006, un estudio reveló que el 56% de los psiquiatras que decidían qué trastornos incluir en el siguiente DSM tienen lazos financieros con al menos una compañía farmacéutica. Hoy vemos las consecuencias, un aluvión de drogas, cada una dirigida a un trastorno inventado que está apoyado por un diagnóstico arbitrario en el DSM.
The fact that it is couched in the language of science without necessarily having any of the scientific data or underpinnings to justify it is as threatening as anything we've seen today.
Y el último y más caro ardid para engañar al público al imitar a la medicina legítima: escanear al cerebro.
We can scan all the brains we want to. The fact that we see changes in different people's brains, changes in functioning, doesn't mean that we've discovered anything that has its origin in the brain. It just means that we're seeing changes, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the brain.
Psiquiatras y psicólogos usan el DSM para etiquetar a 450 millones de personas en el mundo como enfermos mentales. Un total igual a la población de Francia, Italia, Alemania, Canadá, Australia, el Reino Unido y Rusia combinadas. Mientras la venta de drogas psiquiátricas superó los 27 mil millones de dólares al año, los fondos de los gobiernos del mundo para esos pacientes le dan beneficios brutos a la psiquiatría de 440 mil millones de dólares al año. Y una gran parte de ello proviene del diagnóstico y de las drogas que se recetan a los más confiados y vulnerables.
We have swallowed all manner of poisonous certainties, fed us by our parents and school teachers. If the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility.
La declaración de Brock Chisholm ejemplifica la arremetida psiquiátrica directa contra nuestro sistema escolar.
They actually said the purpose was social control, not to pass on knowledge, not to give him something so that he can go into the world of work.
En 1950, psiquiatras y psicólogos de todo el mundo se reunieron en la Casa Blanca para proponer una reorientación total del sistema público escolar.
The White House Conference on Mental Health in the 1950s was a landmark that served to bolster the idea that schools would serve their communities better as mental health clinics than they would as institutions of learning.
In the early 60s, the world of psychiatry started to really go places in this country. Little by little, it came into our schools, our educational system.
Y para 1965 se convirtió en ley. Se les dio luz verde a los psiquiatras para que etiquetaran y drogaran a los estudiantes al por mayor.
A child is labeled ADD or ADHD the minute he can't sit still for a 10-15 minute period of time, or he talks constantly, or ignores the teacher completely. That will get him and earn him an ADD or ADHD label.
En 1987 se etiquetaba libremente a los niños con el trastorno del déficit de atención e hiperactividad TDAH. En un año se diagnosticó a 500,000 niños americanos con este trastorno. Para 1994, esa cantidad se había elevado a 4.4 millones. Como respuesta a la alarma pública generalizada por la aparente epidemia de enfermedad mental, los Institutos Nacionales de Salud, financiados por el gobierno de Estados Unidos, reunieron un panel de prominentes médicos y psiquiatras para explicar a los padres y educadores exactamente qué era el TDAH.
I would like any member of the panel to describe a typical ADHD in terms of symptomatology. Mark, would you like to? Since you see them in your practice.
I mean, I think the panel has been frank, and you know the difficulties here are immense in terms of these. I mean, it is hard. It's very hard to know how to answer this question. They cannot, you know, even when. They are as if driven by a motive. There are some good clinical descriptions. And I think, you know, I think the part of the problem is the profession keeps changing the diagnosis.
At this time, we do not have a diagnostic test for ADHD. Therefore, the validity of the disorder continues to be a problem.
Pero esta escandalosa admisión no detuvo a los psiquiatras de las escuelas. 2 años después, el número de estudiantes americanos diagnosticados con el TDAH se elevó a 6 millones. Hoy, a 20 millones de niños en el mundo se les ha etiquetado con algún tipo de trastorno de aprendizaje, un diagnóstico a menudo hecho en cuestión de minutos.
We would sit behind a two-way mirror along with the parents. We would then look at the child. We would do small manipulative activities with them to see where their deficit was. It was wrong what we were doing. We were looking at a 5-minute glimpse of this child's life and saying, okay, here you go. Here's a little pill, take it, you'll be fine.
Esas pildoritas como Ritalin, Adderall y Concerta las clasifica la Administración para el Control de Estupefacientes de Estados Unidos como sustancias muy adictivas, igual que la cocaína, la heroína y la metanfetamina.
When I was on the Ritalin, it made me just feel like totally different, like I wasn't even who I was.
I was, flipping out, was twitching, going crazy.
I felt like I was out of it all the time, like I wasn't there.
I wasn't human.
You're just a zombie, pretty much. Not, you know, you do what you can just to get by and just don't do anything extra.
My mother never teased me, but she thought I really had ADHD and I was wrong, and I had something wrong with me. So I thought she'd feel bad and feel sorry for me if I died, but then again, I thought that she would miss me a lot, and I also love her a little more than I wanted to kill myself. And so I stopped when I realized that.
La abundancia de medicamentos recetados creó una nueva fuente de ingreso para los chicos: vender sus medicamentos a sus compañeros.
It's called kitty cocaine. They take the Ritalin and they just repackage it and they sell it on campus to the kids because it's like speed.
I figured, like, if I was going to do drugs, I might as well make it worth it. And I ended up doing street drugs, and then I ended up getting into it really